Добрый день. Сегодня у нас в гостях директор по международным связям и отношениям с инвесторами компании СКМ Джок Мендоза-Вилсон. Добрый день.
Добрый день.
На сайте СКМ наш пользователь видел, что ваша компания очень активно сейчас занимается проектом энергоэффективности. Есть вопрос по поводу киотских денег. Расскажите, пожалуйста, что это такое, как это работает, и слышал, что Украина не может потратить киотские миллионы, почему, и кто распоряжается этими фондами.
Yeah, I think we're very active in developing projects which are compliant with the Kyoto Protocol mechanism. The Kyoto Protocol mechanism is quite complex, so I will try and explain simply how it works. It goes back to a treaty that was developed by the United Nations, signed in the Japanese city of Kyoto, I think it was back in 1997. And what it said was that countries agreed to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases they produce. So they took 1990 as the base level and agreed that they would cut their greenhouse gases by 5.2% below the 1990 level. So that's the kind of basic idea. And one of the mechanisms inside Kyoto Protocol was to encourage business to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. And you can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by carrying out a project that either reduces the amount of energy you use or reduces the amount of gases you emit. Then you have to have that project verified independently. And then you can claim a credit for each tonne of greenhouse gas that you save. So, for example, if you can look to save, let's say, 1 million tonnes of greenhouse gases, you then would get equivalently, if those were then correctly verified, you would then be able to claim the value of 1,000 tonnes of carbon saved. Now, the question is, how much is that? Well, it actually depends on market pricing, because these emission reductions are known as ERUs, emission reduction units. And for each emission reduction unit, there's a price. And at the moment, the price for each of those tonnes of carbon or greenhouse gas reduced is somewhere between 11 and 13 euros per tonne. So basically how it works is you invest to improve your energy efficiency, reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. In return for that verified reduction, you're able to get a certificate that says you've saved however many emission reduction units. And then you can sell those emission reduction units to a bank, maybe an investment company, or a national government, or another business in the open market, and take that money, which you can use to then offset the cost of the investment.
Какие последние разработки, направленные на энергоэффективность, были внедрены в предприятиях СКМ?
I think that we're a very big business, and since going back to the 2006-2007, we've placed energy efficiency, improving energy efficiency, as one of being the major objectives across our business group, particularly in our industrial businesses. Maybe I'd like to take an example of DTEC, our energy business. They have 3 major generating stations in the east of Ukraine. And they have a plan which runs from 2006 to 2018 to reconstruct each one of its generating units, the turbine and the boiler and the control mechanism that actually produces the electricity, so to reconstruct each one of them. If you go through that process, what you have is really significant increases in energy efficiency, because essentially the turbines and boilers produce more electricity but with less energy input. And if you wanted to look at our metals business, Metinvest, I think one of the major steps towards energy efficiency is I was yesterday at our steel plant in Mariupol at Azovstal, and earlier this year, in May, they closed their last open hearth steel furnace. And that has 2 major benefits. Firstly, the open hearth process produced significant amounts of pollution, and it was very energy intensive. Now we've moved to a converter steel production process, meaning that we use a lot less energy and it produces significantly less pollution.
Говорят, что газета «Сегодня» типография полностью работает на солнечных батареях, и правда ли это, и действительно это выгодно или нет?
It's not running solely on solar power. I think that's a misquote. It is looking at using solar power and increasing use of renewable energy in the energy it uses to print the newspaper at its print plant, but it's not running on solar power.
Скажите, какие основные приемы энергоэффективности в быту дают наибольший эффект? Какие зеленые привычки стоит вырабатывать в первую очередь?
Rather than leaving electrical appliances on standby, switch them off. If you can control the thermostat on the heating in your apartment, and this is a big question, then turn it down 1 or 2 degrees. If it's really hot in the summer, try not to use air conditioning. Open the window. If you can walk a kilometre rather than take the car or take the autobus, then walk the kilometre. If you can afford it, put usually it's more appropriate for separate buildings, make sure you've got a big thick layer of insulation between the roof space and the ceiling in your home. Make sure your windows fit and preferably have double glazed windows. If you have a building that's made with double construction where there is a gap between one wall and the other, then put in cavity wall insulation. That's like you inject it into the wall and it creates an insulation layer between the 2 brick surfaces. If you're driving, drive at a steady speed, not too high, not too low, fuel efficient. I can't remember what it is in kilometres. It's about yes, there's more things like 80, 90 kilometres per hour. Mm-hmm. This is an efficient speed and uses less fuel. But if we all did them, they would have an enormous collective effect.
Много в прессе фигурирует зеленый тариф и заявление о том, что это будет большой прорыв. Прошло уже несколько лет с момента принятия закона о зеленом тарифе. И, в принципе, вопрос, что это такое и как влияет на развитие альтернативных источников энергии.
The green tariff is really, you'd call it, it's a market mechanism that encourages businesses to invest in renewable energy sources. And it does this by, there's a significant difference. If you're selling energy to the national wholesale market, to Energorinok, you get one price if you're selling them a fossil fuel produced unit of energy, a megawatt of energy. Or you get a separate, much higher price if you're selling them a unit of energy that's been produced through a renewable source. And what that does is it encourages that, makes it much more appealing or attractive for investors to invest in energy production that will, using renewable sources, because they get a guaranteed higher price for each unit of energy that they deliver. So what it will do is encourage investment in renewable energy in Ukraine. I have to say, I cannot remember that. It's significant. It's a significantly higher figure, but I can't remember the percentage difference in it. But believe me, we're investing significantly in it. It's worthwhile.